I never thought there would come a day when my own son would forget his mother's address. I stood in front of the brightly lit house, the house I sold my old age to help him buy. In my hands was a small gift bag, holding nothing more than a box of cookies and a card that read, "Mom misses you." But when the door opened, my daughter-in-law hesitated. "He's not here, Mom, and maybe you should call before you come next time." I smiled, though my hands trembled. Behind that door was their laughter and my silence. That night, I sat on the porch, watching the house glow in the darkness, and I swore I would not leave until my son understood what a real home truly means. If you've ever sacrificed for your child and received only distance in return, you're not alone. Comment where you're watching from and subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tay, the home of family drama stories that make you cry, yet remind you, a mother's love can never be bought. I still remember that morning. The sky was clear, as if heaven itself was blessing my decision. David sat across from me, eyes filled with excitement and worry. "Mom, I found an apartment. I just need a little more help. I promise this will be a place where you can finally rest, without worries." I looked at the son I'd raised with every penny saved after my husband's death. I once believed that seeing my child smile made every struggle worthwhile. I turned to look around the old house where I once hung his clothes to dry, where every crack on the wall held a memory. My hand touched my husband's photo as I whispered softly, "Dear, I think I have to sell it, so our son can have a better life." Have not little know. That afternoon, I went to the agency. They read, stamped, and signed so fast that I didn't even realize I'd just sold a piece of my life. David hugged me tightly. "Mom, I promise you'll have your own room. No more worrying about bills or medicine. You'll see me happy." I believed him. I believed, as every mother does, that when a son makes a promise, he'll keep it. 3 months later, the new apartment was ready. Modern, bright, and full of the scent of perfume. I stood at the door, smiling. "Son, can I place your father's altar in that corner?" My daughter-in-law, Julia, looked up from her phone. "Sure, Mom, but I was planning to put a shelf there. Could you pick another spot?" I nodded silently. I didn't want to argue. I just wanted to be near them, even if it was just a tiny corner in the home I helped buy. But slowly, I realized my room was never prepared. "Not yet," Julia would say. Every time I tried to move in, David would say, "Mom, the place isn't ready yet, just wait a bit." Those wait a bit moments turned into months. The apartment slowly became their home. I was just a polite guest, visiting, smiling, then leaving with an empty bag. One day, I brought David's favorite chicken stew. I stood outside, hearing their laughter inside. I pressed the doorbell. No answer. I pressed again. Still silence. Finally, Julia opened the door, her face indifferent. "Mom, next time please call first. I'm live streaming." I smiled, hiding my trembling hand. "I'm sorry, I just wanted him to eat while it's warm." She took the pot, closed the door. Didn't invite me in. Didn't say another word. I stood there, listening to the lock click shut. That sound, sharp and final, felt like the end of a chapter I hadn't realized was over. That night, David called. He sounded tired. "Mom, don't be mad at Julia. She's just busy, under pressure, and I'm working hard for our future." I only said, "I understand. I just wanted to ask, do you still remember our old house?" "The old house? Mom, that's in the past. Don't think about it anymore." I smiled, though my heart was empty. That house wasn't just a home, it was my memory, my witness to years of sacrifice. Now, I didn't even know where I belonged in my own son's world. One afternoon, I visited our old neighborhood. Our house had a new owner. Across the street, I watched them hang a sign, "Home, Sweet Home." I wasn't angry, just tired. Not because I'd lost the house, but because I'd forgotten what it felt like to be called Mom, with warmth. An old neighbor came over and whispered, "You know, your son's blessed. To have a mother like you and still be so distant, heaven won't ignore that." I smiled. "It's okay. I believe one day he'll understand. Sometimes, people need to lose everything to realize what matters." That night, I sat by the window, gazing at the city lights. A thought crossed my mind, not revenge, but a way to make my son remember what he'd forgotten. I took out the old transfer papers. At the bottom, there was a small note I'd never noticed before. "Party A retains 20% ownership until further notice." I chuckled softly. So I still have a part of that house. Not a piece of land, but a piece of soul. Tomorrow, I'll go there not to reclaim, but to remind. Because sometimes, A mother doesn't need to leave to teach her child a lesson. She only needs to stay quietly, patiently, and let her love speak. Son, I'm still here. Not to live in your house, but to remind you, even if you forget your mother's address, I still remember that you were once my whole world. If you've ever sacrificed for your child only to be forgotten, remember, true love doesn't need recognition, only to be seen. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tay for more family drama stories, tales that remind us a mother's love never disappears. It's just waiting to be understood. Since selling my house, I've been renting a small room in an old apartment block. It's not spacious, just enough for a single bed and a tiny dining table. But I comfort myself. My son has his own family now. I don't need much. As long as he's happy, that's enough. Every morning, I cook something delicious and bring it to David. Each time, I wait outside the gate, hoping to hear his familiar footsteps. But often, only the maid opens the door. Ma'am said you can leave the food here. Your son will get it later. Then the door closes. I stand still, listening to the sound of the lock turning, as if my heart were sealing another layer shut. I remember the first time Julia called me Mom. Her voice was as sweet as candy. I'll take care of him just like you always did. And I believed her. But now, that word Mom has vanished. It's been replaced with phrases like, Mom, please don't worry about our business. Mom, I've got this. You should rest. It sounds gentle, but to me, it feels heavy as stone. I don't need rest, I just need to hear my son say, Mom, I miss you. One evening, there was a knock on my door. It was David. His face was pale and tired. Maybe he'd argued with his wife again. He sat down and sighed. Julia's mad at me. She says I'm not good enough. I'm exhausted, Mom. I stayed quiet, poured him a cup of hot tea, and slid it toward him. Drink this, son. Marriage is like that. Remember, when people speak harshly, sometimes it's just their pain talking. David looked at me, his expression softening. You always say things that calm me down, but why can't I make Julia as happy as Dad made you? I smiled faintly. Because you're trying to be a perfect husband, not a husband who listens. He nodded, then left. He didn't hug me, didn't say thank you. But at least that night, he went home. And I stayed with a cup of tea growing cold. During holidays, I still prepared gifts for them: cakes, clothes, small things. I wanted to arrive early to help clean up, but Julia texted, Mom, could you come a little later? Our friends are taking photos inside. Haired. When I arrived, dinner was ready, but only the two of them were there. Julia smiled. Mom, can you sit on the small chair? The main table's full already. I nodded. I'd spent years sitting on the floor. I didn't need fancy seats. David raised his glass. Thank you, Mom, for always supporting me. Without you, I wouldn't have this life. Everyone clapped. I smiled, but tears welled up and no one noticed. That night, I came home and checked my phone. A new message from Julia. Mom, sorry, I'm busy tomorrow. Please don't come by. I'll send you some food. I read it, and my heart twisted. Not because she forbade me to visit, but because my son, the one who once promised to care for me, stayed silent. A week later, David called. His voice was rushed. Mom, I need you to sign some papers real quick. It's for the bank. Just sign it. I'll explain later. Haft? He sounded tired, so I didn't question at first. But then I saw the numbers and stopped. Property. Full ownership of the apartment. I looked up. Son, what is this? It's just a name change, Mom. Makes it easier for the loan. Please sign. I'm busy. Read again, David. This says I'm giving up my remaining share. Mom, don't worry. I'll take care of you forever. That line, I'd heard it too many times. Every time I believed it, I ended up hurt. I didn't sign. I folded the paper and handed it back. Son, there are things you can take from me, and I'll rebuild. But if you take my trust, you'll never get it back. David fell silent. His eyes flickered. He didn't apologize, just stood up quietly. Before leaving, he said, Mom, I'm only trying to do the right thing. You make it hard for me. I smiled, though my throat tightened. If protecting our bond makes me difficult, then maybe I should learn to be heartless. Since that day, I haven't visited his house. I still cook dinner every night, still set 2 bowls, one for me, one for him. I don't blame. I just wait. Wait for the day he realizes no house is big enough to hold indifference. One afternoon, while mending an old shirt, a neighbor knocked on my door. Mrs. Helen, I just saw your son and daughter-in-law at the supermarket. She said they're selling the apartment to move somewhere nicer. I froze. Selling the house? Yes. Seems they're planning to move abroad. My heart pounded. I wasn't worried about property. I just wondered. If they leave, will they say goodbye? My hands shook as I picked up my phone. Before I could call, a message appeared. Mom, I'm busy. Don't worry about me. I'll handle everything. No, I love you. No, I'll come back. I'm said. I closed the phone, tears falling, not because they were leaving, but because I realized that even when they were here, I'd already been left behind. That night, I opened the drawer and took out the old property paper. The yellow light shone on a small line. Party A retains 20% ownership of the property. I smiled through tears. Maybe God left this tiny doorway so a mother could still reach her son's heart through the smallest crack. I wiped my tears and folded the paper carefully. Tomorrow, I'll go to his house. Not to reclaim the property, but to reclaim something far more precious. The respect a son owes his mother. If your children have forgotten you, even though you're the one who gave them everything, you're not alone. Comment where you're watching from and tell me in your place, does filial love still exist? Don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tay for more family drama stories, where every tear is a reminder of love, gratitude, and awakening. I couldn't sleep all night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my son holding that property document. I asked myself, where did I go wrong? Did I love him too much, so much that he thought everything I had was his by right? Early the next morning, before sunrise, I cooked David's favorite soup, the one he always asked for on rainy days as a child. I thought, if we can just sit down for one meal together, everything will be fine. I believed no distance between mother and son was too wide for a shared meal to heal. But just as I set the table, my phone rang. It was David. I answered eagerly. Son, have you eaten? His voice was urgent, colder than usual. Mom, I'm really busy, but I need you to help me with something. Important. Any workings after the diviner? Of course, tell me. Can you transfer the money from your savings account? Just temporarily. I need to pay off a project debt. I'll return it in a few weeks. I froze. That was my medicine and retirement money. Small, but all I had left after selling the house. Why didn't you tell me sooner, son? What happened? It's nothing serious, Mom. Just trust me like you used to. I went quiet. I wanted to believe him, but a mother's instinct told me something was wrong. Son, are you hiding something from me? Mom, why do you always doubt me? I'm trying to build a future for you, too. I smiled faintly, though my heart ached. I don't doubt you. I just worry you're tired. I'm afraid you're losing something more valuable than money. What do you mean? The trust of the person who believed in you the most. There was silence on the other end. Then, he hung up. That afternoon, I opened the cupboard and took out my savings book. I looked at the small balance, every coin saved from sewing clothes for neighbors. I placed my hand on the page and sighed. If giving you this money helps you stand again, I'll do it. But if it only pulls you deeper into the pit, then I won't. I sat still and didn't transfer the money. I knew some lessons can only be learned through loss. 2 days later, an old friend of David's, Michael, stopped by the tailor shop where I work. He gave a sad smile. Mrs. Helen, how are you? David's been under a lot of pressure lately. I asked, what's going on with him? He glanced around and lowered his voice. He invested too big. I heard he took bank loans and borrowed from acquaintances. If he can't turn it around, he could lose the house. My heart grew heavy. Not for the money, but for that house, the one I sold everything to help him buy. If he loses it now, then it's like I sold my happiness into the hands of risk. That night, I got a message. Mom, I'm sorry for losing my temper. I'll come see you tomorrow. I was so happy I couldn't sleep. The next morning, I woke early, set the table, and cooked the soup again. I put out 2 bowls and 2 pairs of chopsticks, just like before. But the knock on the door wasn't David. It was a well-dressed woman with a leather bag, tapping her nails on the door. Mrs. Helen, I'm from the bank. I'm here to confirm the mortgage on the property of Mrs. Helen and Mr. David George. I froze. A mortgage? On which house? The apartment at 18 River Street. According to our records, you still hold 20% co-ownership, so we need your signature to process the loan. I couldn't believe my ears. David had mortgaged even my remaining share? Could there be some mistake? She smiled politely. No, everything's by the book. Mr. David signed as representative. Your daughter-in-law has signed as well. It felt like my world collapsed. All sounds faded. I could only hear my own heartbeat thudding as if counting down the last beats of my trust. I asked for a copy of the documents and closed the door slowly. In my small room, sunlight slipped through the crack onto the white paper where my son's signature sat in familiar ink I once taught him to write. I sank into a chair, gripping the paper. The first tear fell on the words, Helen George. So a mother's trust can be traded for money. That night, I didn't cry anymore. I just sat quietly, staring out the window at the distant lights blinking like falling stars. I remembered what my husband once said. You can forgive those who hurt you, but never let them forget what you've sacrificed. And I knew what I had to do. Not to reclaim the house, but to make my son understand. There are things a mother doesn't need back, she only needs them to be honored. I called David. This time I spoke clearly, voice steady. Son, I know. I'm not angry, but come to my place tomorrow. I want us to talk, for the first time as two adults. Silence. Then David's voice shaking. Mom, I'm sorry. I'll come. After hanging up, I looked around my small room, lit a candle, and set the table. The air felt still, like the room itself was holding its breath for what was coming. On the table, I placed the mortgage papers and an old photo. Me, my husband, and David at 6 years old. I stroked my son's face in the picture and whispered, Tomorrow, you'll understand. A home isn't something you buy, it's where someone waits for you, no matter how hurt they are. If this story reminds you of your own when trust is traded for money but a mother's love remains, you are not alone. Comment where you're watching from and tell me, do you believe in a mother's forgiveness? And don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tay for more family drama stories, where every wound is love speaking out loud. The next morning, I sat waiting at the table, the mortgage paper and old photo laid out. Outside, a breeze stirred the curtain. It was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking, tick, 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 counting down to the confrontation. Near noon, there was a knock. I opened the door, and David was there, exhausted face, dark circles under his eyes. He held a bag of fruit I like, a clumsy gesture of apology. Mom, his voice was hoarse, I know you're angry. I didn't mean to. I looked at my son, no longer the child I once held, not the man I once admired. In front of me stood someone ruled by his own fear and greed. I invited him to sit. Have you eaten? I'm not hungry. I poured tea and spoke evenly. I know about the mortgage. The banker came. They said I'm a co-owner. David clenched his hands. Let me explain. No need. I cut him off. I have only one question. Do you know what you signed? I thought it was the only way to save the project. If it succeeds, you'll be proud of me. I smiled faintly, and it stung my eyes. I don't need pride, son. I need you not to take the one thing I have left. What do you mean? My trust. He lowered his head and said nothing. The room grew heavy. Finally, he whispered, I'll give you everything back. I just can't right now. I sighed softly. You don't need to return money. I want you to return the value of your promise. I stood, opened a drawer, and took out an old file. I used to think I only had 20% of that apartment left, but you're wrong. I still keep the co-ownership copy, the one I never handed to anyone. David looked up, stunned. You still have it? I nodded. I never meant to use it. But perhaps it's time, not to take back assets, but to teach you. Every action has consequences. He was silent a long time, then asked quietly, What will you do? I looked him in the eye. I'll go to the bank. I'll halt the loan process. If they won't listen, I'll file a complaint. You're going to sue me? I shook my head, voice calm. No, I'll challenge the wrongdoing, not you, but you must face responsibility. I have too heard from the Kaunas. David sprang up, voice breaking. Don't do that, Mom. If you stop it, I'll lose everything. I stayed seated, hands around the steaming cup. Don't you see? You've already lost not money, but yourself. He stepped forward and knelt. Mom, I only wanted to make you happy. I never meant to hurt you. I rested my hand on his head, gentle as ever. I know, but love can't save anyone when ambition blinds it. The next day, I went to the bank. The manager, a middle-aged woman, looked surprised. You want to dispute the file? No, I want to pause the mortgage process. I have that right. She read the documents and nodded. You're correct. As co-owner, you can request a review, but this will cause trouble for your son. I smiled softly. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing it to keep him from losing himself. She studied me for a long moment, then said, You're a rare kind of mother. 10-track. No, I replied, just someone who was too gentle and has learned to be firm. I returned home and turned on the TV. The news talked about small companies collapsing under debt. I saw David in a segment, a report about a young entrepreneur's failure. Watching him lower his head as he left a building cut me to the core. I turned off the TV, clenching my hands. I took no joy in being right. I only felt sorrow. So deep my tears fell without knowing for whom. 2 days later, David came. No fruit, no excuses. He simply knelt before me. Mom, I've lost everything. The house, the project, even friends. They say I'm foolish for letting you interfere, but I know you saved me. I placed my hand on his shoulder. I didn't save anyone, son. I only stopped you from destroying yourself. I'm sorry. I don't deserve to be your son. You don't have to deserve it. You only have to be honest. It's not nice of him. He cried the tight, broken sobs of a child relearning how to say, Mom. I let his tears fall on my hands, warm, salty, real enough to make my heart tremble. After that, David moved in with me for a few days. In the mornings, he helped tidy the yard, brewed tea, fixed the old shelf. At night, we ate together the soup from years ago, now cooked by him. He asked, Mom, why aren't you angry with me? I smiled gently. I am, but anger won't make you better. Forgiveness might. I'm afraid you'll never see me the same way again. No, son, I see you the way the sun sees the dawn. No matter how long the night, it rises again. I know life can't go back to what it was, but at least I saw something return in my son's eyes, something I thought was gone forever. Gratitude. That house may never be mine again. But I've realized some homes aren't built on land. They live in the heart, where people finally learn to understand and to love. If you've ever forgiven after being betrayed, you're not weak. You're stronger than those who chose revenge. Comment where you're watching from so I know how far this story has reached. And don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tay for more family drama stories where every mother finds her voice again, even in silence. The days passed, and my small house suddenly felt warm again. In the mornings, David woke early to sweep the yard and make tea. In the evenings, he sat and listened as I told stories of the old days, years of hunger, tears, and small joys. I didn't blame him or bring up the past. We only talked about food, the weather, and the light things a mother and son had forgotten for so many years. One afternoon, while I was hanging laundry, David stepped onto the porch and said quietly, Mom, I'm looking for a different job. I might start over. I nodded, my heart light as the breeze. That's good, son. Failure isn't scary. What's scary is forgetting how to stand up again. He smiled his first real smile after so many tired days. I thought maybe heaven had heard a mother's prayer. But the storms weren't over. That evening, while I was cooking, there was a knock at the door. David ran to open it and froze. Julia stood there with a suitcase, her eyes cold and proud. I need to talk to you. Alone. I stood in the kitchen and felt my heart sink. David lowered his voice. Say what you need. Mom is fine. Julia came in, her gaze flicking over me for a second, enough to show her displeasure. Hello, Mom. I just came to get some papers. Go ahead, I answered calmly. She put her bag down and spoke fast. Are you planning to live here forever? Are you going to give up everything, your company, the house, your friends? I'm not giving up anything. I'm learning how to live right. Right? Julia laughed, bitter. You think staying here with your mother in this tiny house is right? You had everything, David. You ruined it all with one stupid decision. That decision saved me. No, it killed you. And it killed me too. The air turned heavy. I set the bowl down and stepped onto the porch. Calm down, both of you. No one is killing anyone. We're just learning how to love again. Julia gave a thin smile. You always preach. Do you know you're the reason he lost everything? If you hadn't interfered, he would have gotten more funding. He wouldn't have gone bankrupt. I stayed quiet. Her words cut like a knife, but I didn't dodge them. I only asked softly, So you think money can buy back integrity? Julia gripped her bag. Integrity doesn't pay the bills, Mom. I looked at her and answered slowly, firmly. You're right, but without integrity, people are alive only in body. David stepped in, voice shaking. Julia, stop. I'm the one who was wrong, not my mother. You always take her side. All your life it's been because of Mom. What about me? Have you ever thought of me? I have, but maybe you don't see it because Mom asks for nothing, and you ask for everything. Julia froze, then laughed bitterly. Fine, stay here with your mother. I don't want to see either of you. She turned and pulled her suitcase toward the door. As her hand touched the knob, I spoke. Julia. She stopped. I walked over and handed her a neatly folded handkerchief. Take this. It's going to rain." She looked at me, her eyes wavering. "Don't you hate me?" "No, hate is for the young before they learn how to love." The door closed. Only David and I remained. He collapsed into a chair, face in his hands. "Mom, I've ruined everything. I've lost it all. I have nothing left." I sat beside him and said softly, "You still have me." "But Mom, I failed." "It's all right. Failure is the tuition of growing up. You don't understand." Julia left me. I smiled gently. "Someone who leaves when you fall may not be the one who stays when you stand." David cried. It wasn't the cry of a man who lost money, but of a child who had just found himself. A few weeks later, Julia returned. Not to reconcile, just to collect the rest of her things from the old apartment. When she came in, she saw David helping me repaint the wall. The old, damp room now shone in clean white. "What are you doing?" "Painting. Mom says when we tidy our home, we tidy our hearts too." Julia was silent. Her eyes softened. She looked around, then said quietly, "Mom, I'm sorry. I was too harsh that day." I set the brush down and smiled. "It's all right. A person who admits a mistake is already growing up. I'm afraid of losing everything." "Everyone is, but losing everything isn't as scary as losing gratitude." She lowered her head. I looked at them both and felt light inside. Maybe the first cracks of healing had appeared. That afternoon, as Julia was leaving, David handed her an envelope. "I sold my old watch to return your investment." She took it, tears falling. "You don't have to." "I do. For the first time, I want to live right, not to prove anything." Julia nodded, then turned to me. "Mom, if you have time, I'd like to invite you to dinner. Not the old house, my new rented place. It's small, but it's sincere." I looked at her and saw it no more coldness, no more pride, but the eyes of someone learning to understand. "I'll come," I said, "but only if you really want to cook, not to prove anything." She laughed and nodded. When the door closed, I turned to David. "See? What comes from kindness is never lost." "Mom, I understand now. To be loved, sometimes we have to learn to apologize first." I brushed his hair and said softly, "Not apologize first, love first." Outside, the first rain of the season began to fall. Each drop on the tin roof sounded like the heartbeat of a house coming back to life. I sat by the window, watching two people share an umbrella at the alley's edge. I didn't know if they would get back together, but I knew one thing for certain. This house had been saved not by money, but by kindness. If you've ever had to choose between forgiveness and hurt, choose forgiveness. It's the only road back to peace. Comment where you're watching from so I know this story reached your heart. And don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tay for more family drama stories where tears become lessons and lessons become love. The rain fell all night. I sat by the window, watching two figures under one umbrella walk slowly through the thin curtain of rain. I didn't know where they would go, or whether the future could ever return to what it was. I only knew that something inside me had been set down light, calm, and warm. I smiled and whispered, "Thank heaven my child still knows how to turn back." In the days that followed, life found its old rhythm. David started working at a small company again. In the mornings he woke early, brewed tea, and set a cup out for me before leaving. In the evenings, he came home and told me about his day, simple, content. Julia stopped by sometimes. No makeup, none of the old pride. She brought cakes, flowers, and a quiet shyness in her eyes. Once, she stood at the door and said softly, "Mom, I'm sorry for forgetting who helped me have a first home." I rested my hand on her shoulder and answered gently, "Knowing your mistake is enough. Don't let it become a habit." She nodded, smiling through tears. I didn't ask whether they would get back together. Love is like a house if there are cracks. Only those inside know whether to repair or to leave. I only knew that whenever Julia came, David smiled the smile I hadn't seen for years. One afternoon he said, "Mom, I want to reopen the cafe, but this time I won't borrow from anyone. I want to do it with you." I looked up, surprised. "With me? I don't have the strength." "You don't have to work. Just sit there, brew tea, and talk to customers. I'll name it Helen's Corner, Mom's Little Nook." I laughed as tears slid down. "Son, I've never needed my name anywhere. Seeing you grow up is enough." "But you deserve it," David said. "Without you, I wouldn't be here." A month later, the cafe opened. Small but warm. Cream walls, brown wooden doors, and a little corner displaying old photos. Me, my husband, and David as a child. On the wall, David hung a wooden sign carved with the words, A house built by love can never be lost. Guests said the place felt special, both warm and calm. David smiled and said, "Because the person who made this place is my mother, the one who knows how to turn pain into peace." He's lied. I sat in my corner, brewing tea, listening to my son chat with customers. Sometimes Julia stopped by to help. The three of us no longer a perfect family, but a grateful one. One morning, a young woman came and spoke softly. "Ma'am, I heard your story. I fought with my mother and left home. Now I don't know how to go back." I held her hand and smiled. "You don't need to go back to the house, just go back in your heart." She cried, and I realized my story wasn't only pain, it was a mirror for others to see themselves. Another afternoon, David sat beside me, looking out the window. "Mom, I'm afraid that when you're gone someday, I'll forget what I had." I smiled. "There's no need to fear. When you've learned to cherish, I'm already in your heart. Even if I'm not here, you'll hear my voice in every kind thing you do. Mom, if there's a next life, I still want to be your son. And it's not last." "No, my child," I answered, eyes stinging. "If there's a next life, I want to be your friend. So you won't owe me, and I won't have to forgive. Just two people who know how to love." Time passed, and Helen's Corner became a stop for the homesick, the lonely, and those who had lost faith. They came, sat with a cup of tea, and told their stories. I didn't advise, I listened. Because I know sometimes what we need most isn't advice, but someone willing to sit quietly and let us cry. When guests left, I always said the same line, "Child, don't forget to call home even just once." Many smiled and nodded. Some returned with flowers, pastries, or simply a thank you. And I realized perhaps God didn't take my house, He just moved it somewhere else, into the hearts of those who once forgot, then remembered. One evening, after we closed, David sat across from me. "Mom, do you still remember the old house?" "Of course. I found the new owners. They said they want to invite you over. Your story moved them." I smiled. "Is that so? Good. That house now belongs to people who treasure it. I don't need to go back. Everything I need is already here." I pointed to my heart. David was quiet, then nodded. That night, I wrote in the little notebook I'd kept since the first day my son forgot himself. I once sold my house so my son could be happy, but I didn't know that true happiness can't be bought. It only comes when we know how to love, to apologize, and to be grateful. I closed the notebook and turned off the light. Outside, the rain fell, and my heart was strangely at peace. The next morning, when I opened the cafe, I saw a small note on the door in David's handwriting. "Mom, I owe you for life, but I promise. I will never again let you stand outside the gate of any house." I stood there, tears falling, but this time they were tears of joy, because I knew my son had finally come home not to a house, but to gratitude. If this story makes you think of your mother, call her today. Don't wait until the house is only a memory. Comment where you're watching from so I know how far this story has traveled. And don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tay for more family drama stories where every tear is a seed of love, and every wound reminds us that home is the place that always waits for our return.